All right, welcome back to the Canadian Gun Vault, behind the vault door. My name is Mark Morelli, and this week's podcast episode is going to be regarding a subject that I see people asking a lot of questions about. How do I get my spouse into shooting? You know, I've been watching the forums for years, and certainly I've seen a long list of complaints from men saying that they, don't have spouses that are into shooting, and it creates a ton of static. I mean, like, you want to go buy that new favorite gun, you're going to have to barter, definitely, wheel and deal. You might have to, finish that kitchen, or refinish, the new playroom before you get a chance or an opportunity to own that next favorite gun. Well, certainly it makes it a lot easier if your spouse is into shooting. And this seems to be the stumbling point for a lot of guys. I don't know if you don't want your women at the range, or maybe you feel like it's your sanctuary, and you don't want to bring your spouse there for the all those guys out there that are in a rush to go to work to get away from their wives, certainly in their downtime and when they're trying to relax. I know some people that don't want to have their spouses with them, but for the people that do, and for the people that really enjoy a good partnership and all the rewards that come with really getting along with your spouse, that you want to have them actually out at the range shooting, this is what I'm going to recommend. Because a lot of people have asked me, how can I get my wife into shooting? I really want to see my girlfriend shoot a gun, but she's nervous, she's scared. The first thing I'll tell you is this: definitely don't hand them your favorite gun. I mean, if you've been shooting for years and you got a favorite rifle, chances are it's not going to be a 22. Don't hand your 30-06 bolt-action hunting rifle to your wife, not show her how to handle it correctly, sit her down on a bench stationary and have her pull the trigger. She will never want to come to the range again. She will do it once, she will go, holy shit, that hurt, and never again show up on the line. And if you want to scare her off, great. That's a fantastic idea. But my recommendation is that if you really, really want to see her come out again and enjoy herself, that's not the way to do it. And if you're going to stick a large caliber handgun into their hands for the first time and try and have them hit paper at 25 yards, that's not going to work either. Shooting handguns is a skill that develops over time. It certainly is a discipline that is learned and through developing good technique and form. Starting off that far away from a target, again, not something I would recommend. And so for the people that have asked me this question repetitively, I'm going to do this podcast, and this is what I suggest. Get yourself a couple of 22s. Grab yourself a nice 22 rifle and a nice 22 pistol. The Ruger Mark IIIs and 4s, they come apart a little bit easier, are definitely solid choices. Grab yourself a 10-22. Seems to be a fan favorite, for a first semi-automatic handgun. If you want to do something a little bit different and keep it interesting, maybe you want to grab yourself an old vintage 22 pump. Always make great choices, like a little gallery gun. I find that those are really popular with the ladies once they start shooting. And I'll tell you this, as a guy, I would say this without any reservation, that I have seen women outshoot men time and time again. Once they get it and they get a feel for it, it becomes something of a comical item for me to watch spouses outshoot their husbands, and it's always interesting to see the reaction on men's faces. The more secure guys will definitely sit there and say, she did it again. I would suggest that you probably have to be pretty secure in your masculinity to have your wife or your girlfriend best you on the firing line with a better score. But if you want to show your spouse how to shoot correctly, and if you don't want to scare the bejesus out of them, then what I'm going to recommend is that you get yourself a nice 22 rifle and a nice 22 handgun, 22 caliber handgun, and get them close. And I would suggest you start with, the fundamentals, showing them the correct sight picture that they should be seeing. Draw it on a piece of paper. Let them know what it is that they should be looking at. When they're aiming the gun, and definitely make sure they're using the correct eye. When they're aiming down the barrel of that rifle. I've seen some really funny things occur on the line, and when people don't know, they don't know. To show them the correct way to stand, to hold the rifle, always beginning by showing them the mechanics and the operational controls, and the safety is important. Starting first and foremost, safety first. Have them point the gun in a safe direction at all times. Have them keep their finger outside the trigger guard unless they're planning on shooting, and everything else will flow from that. You can make just about any mistake you want on the firing line, as long as the gun is pointed in the correct direction and is on safe, and or your finger is outside the trigger guard. You can avoid 999 problems out of 1,000 right away. But once you get them used to that sight picture and you've shown them how to load a gun, it's important to have them dry fire a couple of times. I know some people say don't dry fire at 22. I'm thinking they mean repetitive dry firing. But I mean, if you want to show them how to aim and fire a gun, let them know that when they pull the trigger that the sight picture shouldn't be disturbed. So to have them aiming at a fairly close range, if your local range will allow you to shoot at 10 or 15 meters with a rifle at paper, take advantage of that. If you got a private side range, like a competition range, like some of the ranges in our area here have, bring them up close and have them hit that bullseye several times, and then gradually move them backwards. And once they get used to the idea of that noise, coming out of that gun when they pull the trigger, and get them past that, perhaps initial shock to your system, hearing that bang when you just move your finger just a little bit after the gun is loaded. Once you get past that, you might be surprised at how well your girlfriend or fiance or wife does. And if you can get them, comfortable with the idea of, shooting a gun and the concept of shooting a gun, and gradually move them backwards, as long as they stay, on paper, and you keep them in the bullseye area, starting from 5 feet, working back to 10. You may find that they really will start to enjoy it if they can, start to feel that sense of competition, that sometimes develops when people get good at things. So, I mean, if you start at 5 and work your way back to, 15 meters, and now you're, shooting a 22 caliber handgun and a 22 caliber rifle, and she's starting to feel comfortable, you may want to move on to something a little bit larger. And that's probably the single biggest mistake I see people make, is they move up progressively a little too fast. And so if you can get your wife, perhaps going from a 22 to say, like a 380, or even a light powered 9 if you home load, to gradually work them upwards through that power scale, building your way up to, larger caliber, more powerful handguns. You're going to get better results that way. And be patient, please, guys. Don't yell at your wife. I mean, if she turns around sideways and points the gun at you, I think that that warrants maybe an authoritarian sort of instruction to point it away from you. I get it, but like if she's not hitting the target right away, I see guys making this mistake. They start to get a little bit impatient and they start to yell. Some guys actually will start to yell, which completely ruins the experience. I'm sure, for a lot of women. And, and I've seen guys on the line, if they hand their favorite gun, which might be a large caliber Magnum pistol, to their wives, and they get scared or they get yelled at, and, they put the guns down and go back to the car and wait till their husbands are finished. And believe me, unless that's what you want, that'll probably be the last time she comes out on the line, fellas. So if you can be patient, and you can, work closely with her, it can actually be a really great experience to share together, and to, kind of develop that sense of, bonding and doing something together as a couple. I see a lot of couples on the line. And I love it. It's fantastic, and it's always good to see, the ladies that can keep up sometimes actually excel and go right past their men in terms of performance. I love watching that. It's a lot of fun. So now, if you've gradually built them upwards, and into categories of pistols that are much larger, bring them over to the steel. Blow up some balloons. Make it fun. Get yourself some targets that that are reactive. I always tell people, paper's great, but steel just sells people on the idea of shooting for life. And if you blow up some balloons and you get that instant gratification, that one feels when you see that colored balloon pop, or got a nice fresh piece of white painted steel and you hear that loud ringing noise, when you hit it, that's when you're going to get them hooked. And certainly that next favorite purchase that you're looking to make at your local gun store might not be as difficult a sell as it once was. And I mean, if you're feeling really, adventurous, if you've got one of those wives that doesn't mind trying something, a little more exciting, then, once you've built them up to large Magnum or large caliber pistols, then get them on the Magnums. Like that's definitely something that I definitely think everybody should try at least once, and it's in those moments that all those things that you've taught them before, the fundamentals, become that much more important, to have them roll their shoulders, upwards, and to lock their arms out, and to have a firm grip on that gun. I mean, it's really important then, when you're shooting pistols that are that much more powerful than standard loads, that those techniques become, really important. And if you can shake, I always do it. I shake a girl's hand and I squeeze. To just kind of give them the sensation of how hard they should be kind of squeezing the pistol. You don't want to death grip it, but at the same time, you've definitely got to hold on to 357 Magnum and 44s, and I get no pleasure watching YouTube videos where guys hand 50 caliber Desert Eagles to their girlfriends and they get smacked off the nose. I mean, I like anybody else, I go, ooh, and wince and look away. But I mean, I'll watch those videos, but I mean, it's not a friendly thing to do to somebody. If you're going to hand somebody a Magnum caliber pistol, you definitely want to make sure that they're prepared for it, and all that comes with proper instruction and the development of those good techniques and good form that you learn with the 22s. And so if you can get your girlfriend comfortable enough to shoot Magnum pistols, if she's not recoil shy, if you learn that through the gradually ascending scale through the different calibers, I'll tell you guys, you'll have a girlfriend or a wife that'll be hooked for life, and she'll be coming to the range with you every week. Anyway, that's about all we have time for tonight on this week's podcast and episode of Canadian Gun Vault's Behind the Vault Door. We hope you've had a good evening and a great summer. Have a good night, folks.